you know, labor and statistics. Those are really helpful for things like business plans and coming up with new designs for programs. So it was really informative for me.
Excellent, excellent. I will say here before we actually get started, and I'll probably reiterate as we go, that we did break this. It was going to be a 1 hour session. We broke it into 2 halves. The recommendation was we're going to just do a sort of lecture style information dump. So apologies in advance for the first half hour. And then we'll probably have a little bit of time, I'm guessing, for Q&A at the end of the first half hour, and we're going to focus on more open discussion and Q&A in the second half. So feel free to go somewhere else, but I'm hoping you'll stay with us. Our goal is to have the biggest group at the end of the day. So let me see who's here. We are recording now, so if that makes anybody queasy, now is your chance to leave. We'll give it just 1 more minute and then we'll get going.
Thanks, Giselle.
That was based on a first-hand experience when we were still, that's pre-pandemic, right?
Yeah, I'm still rocking out over here.
I know those gems are just kind of like diamonds in the eyes of the kids.
Yeah, thank you. Well, still having a lot of fun with it.
You can probably share your slide, David.
All right, let's do introductions, and then I'm going to take that giant leap of trust that is sharing content, and hope that we don't have any technical difficulties. I spend a lot of time in the tech area, and this part always makes me a little bit nervous. So let's get rolling. Thank you all for joining the session. We're honored to have this chance to share our process with you and hopefully help you tackle your challenges with a new way of thinking and innovation mindset. My name is David Voetman, and I'm the director of the Emerging Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Edmonds College. I'll mention that after graduating college, my first job included 2 years in Japan. I mention that now so that if you keep that in mind, some of what I say later will probably make a little bit more sense. With the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, we are collaborating with the Small Business Administration. And today we have Giselle interacting with you on the chat side of this webinar. So I'm going to let her take a moment and introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. So my name is, hello. I know it's kind of weird having being here. Well, I am Giselle Seguid. I'm from the Washington Small Business Development Center, and Snohomish County is my office center. We do have a partnership with Edmonds College, and we are so happy to have that inked, right, Danielle? But we're looking forward for a good conversation. It's about innovation. It's about entrepreneurial mindset. So if you have any question, again, drop it in the chat. We will try to respond to that one. Chuck or Carlos will be here as well to help me answer some of your questions. And if we don't answer your question, David will definitely sort of discuss that during the session. I will drop also our email there so that if in case you forgot something or you have that burning questions, feel free to email us as well. Back to you, David.
Excellent, excellent. I'll also mention that Chuck is a longtime business owner and teaches entrepreneurship, business strategy, and marketing with Edmonds College. So That's a little bit of a CV on Chuck. As Giselle mentioned, we also have Danielle Carnes, who is my boss on this webinar. She is the Vice President for Innovation and Strategic Partnerships. So thank you for joining. I'm going to start up the slideshow here. So give me half a second. All right, so everybody should see that now. I'll say at the beginning, today, if you walk away with nothing else, I hope that you'll remember this. Start small, start now, experiment to learn, and then scale up. Edmonds College and the SBA are working together to provide a lean approach to concept development and startup success. Our goal is to inspire action and support you along the full arc of innovation from concept to startup. Our Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship is housed in our 11,000 square foot engineering technology building with well over $2 million in prototyping equipment. So if you have a product idea, welcome to your creative sandbox with all the tools you need to fabricate almost anything. We're helping our partners right now develop projects from board games to autonomous robot sailboats. If you have a service idea, you'll find that the development process we support still fully applies. After all, the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship is a service business, and we practice what we teach. We're developing an expanding list of trainings that provide just-in-time learning focused on rapid 2-hour classes. If you want to learn more about today's topics, join me on November 16th when I will host Tucker Koss from Koss Tailored. They're an industry leader in furniture and upholstery design and manufacture for customers such as Boeing and Nordstrom. On the 16th, Tucker and I will do a deeper dive into innovation mindset. Then on December 1st, we'll be hosting Giselle and the SBA for the first of 3 sessions on financial fluency. These 2-hour hands-on sessions are just $50 a person and open to the public. So please join us. We can help you move from a thought to a thing, from an idea to reality, faster than you ever thought possible. And we want to start today with a shift in mindset. We're going to cover a lot, and we're mainly focused on a framework for innovation. If you're interested, come on in for a class. We won't cover everything today. And I'll ask Giselle to put the web address up in the chat. So yeah, that's already there. Let's dig in. We are often wondering why startups fail. If you can go ahead and write your thoughts into the chat, take a minute, share your thoughts. While you write, let me say that if you want to learn more about the perspectives we're sharing in the next 25 minutes or so, please contact us. Our information will be on the screen at the end of the presentation. Or stick around for our second session today, and we'll have a more informal Q&A with discussion. If you think of a question as we go, please just write them into the chat. We love questions. In fact, for the Q&A, you could ask us about the 5 whys. All right, if there's some in there, I'm wondering if Giselle can just read a couple.
So the top 3, as Amy have mentioned, it's fear, lack of mentorship, and I'm assuming the dollar means funding.
Yeah, for funding, come to the financial fluency class. Yeah, these are great. And you can keep on writing them in. There are clearly a lot of risks when you consider starting a small business. Ultimately, we suspect that most startups fail simply because they don't start up. We're located just west of Highway 99 on 196, and the city of Linwood has told us that about 40,000 cars drive by every day. We believe every one of these carries a potential innovator. And if you think I'm wrong, all it takes is a great idea and some grit. One of my heroes runs a successful company that designs, manufactures, and sells accessories for Lego minifigs. These almost 2-inch high minifigs, you would think it's a little bit ridiculous. But if you want to know more about what makes his business so successful, you can also ask us that in the Q&A. If you don't think you can come up with an idea like this, let me just ask you a question. In the last 72 hours, have you experienced anything that left you feeling dissatisfied? Maybe you Googled a product that you couldn't find and you had an experience that left you feeling meh. Maybe you look at the direction the world is headed and it doesn't match your preferred future. It doesn't match the reality that you hope for your friends and your loved ones. That dissatisfaction, I believe, is your subconscious telling you that you have a better idea. Or think about it this way. Unless you live under a tree in the woods, most of what you experience in life is based on the decisions made by other human beings. Your shoes, your phone, your car, political systems, bureaucracies. These are all the results of human decisions. Why not yours? When we ask why long enough, we come to the conclusion that startups fail because they don't start up. Why not? I think that everything we've mentioned in the chat, and the fear really gets to it, really amounts to this barrier that can be summed up in 3 words. Fear of failure. We are paralyzed by fear of failure. And physics tells us that an object at rest tends to stay at rest. This means it's really hard to get moving. But how would you act if you had no fear of failure? What if I told you that those fears are an illusion, the result of a broken mindset? Why do we fear failure? I think we fear failure because we prioritize knowing over learning. We've bought into a culture of knowledge, and it makes us feel like we have to know before we act. We think we need to get all our ducks in a row. But let me confess, I feel this pressure every day, and I'll bet Giselle does too. We believe we can help you move forward by reframing your thinking into a lifestyle of learning. Let me take another shot at this. The culture of knowledge manifests as a preoccupation with certainty. In this culture, you trust your intuition, you trust statistics, you trust expert opinions rather than testing. You probably do a lot of planning before you consider acting. On the other hand, the culture of learning embraces uncertainty. Intuition, statistics, and expert opinions tell us about the past, and that is extremely valuable. But if you want to pursue a preferred future, you need to move beyond this threshold of knowledge. To innovate, we need to loosen our grip on the past and move into the future. We need to be knowers. We need not just to be knowers, but to be learners. We love the way Eric Ries defines this situation in his book, Lean Startup. A startup is a human institution designed to create a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. As we move into the future, we need better tools to help us deal with this extreme uncertainty. And innovators like us are always trying to predict the future. We have to say we agree with Alan Kay that the best way to predict the future is to invent it. If you want to know who Alan Kay is, you can ask me about that in the Q&A as well. Vision is the first step in this creation process. What do you see that no one else sees? Don't worry about going big. We encourage you to start with something small. For example, I love that button-down shirts keep my collar in place, but I don't like buttons on my collar. So I asked, wouldn't it be amazing if I could set my shirt collars anywhere I wanted and then lock them in place? So I invented a magnetic collar stay that holds my collar in any position I desire. I mention this because it's a silly, small idea, but it got me moving. Think of your vision as a challenge, your Everest, the mountain you want to climb. This mountain, this challenge represents an outcome you desire, but you don't know, you can't know everything that stands in your way. If you know exactly how to execute your challenge, you probably need a bigger vision. To proceed, you'll need to cross the threshold of knowledge. You have to move beyond what you know in order to discover the way forward. Imagine it like this. If you want to actually summit Everest, you're going to have to leave Camp 4 in the dead of night. It's pitch black, and you won't be able to see past your headlamp for hours. But if you wait until the sun comes up and you can see, you won't make it to the summit and back alive. So as you get started, you have to act within the limited range of your headlamp to move forward. This is what it's like to push your threshold of knowledge forward. There we go. Once you've established your challenge, your vision, you can move to insight. This is where you connect with your market to meet their needs, and they can help you see more clearly. Here's a bonus part of the framework. As you climb your metaphorical mountain, you'll move through 3 zones. Desirability are the human factors. This is where we ask, what do real people want today? Feasibility are technological factors, where we ask, what can we actually produce in the near future? And viability are the economic factors that help us ask questions of business sustainability. Without working through all 3 of these, it's difficult to succeed. It is a messy process and it's only nominally linear. And I'm throwing this in here really quickly with little explanation, but we can talk about it more in the second half. For now, I want to propose that to navigate these zones, we need to introduce a deceptively simple framework that we call Kata. Kata comes out of the Toyota production system. In Japanese, Kata signifies a way of doing things. It's often associated with martial arts as a disciplined practice with a sense of direction. Kata is not something you achieve, it's something you become. When I lived in Japan, I studied a martial art called Aikido. And in Aikido, the goal of Kata practice is to internalize the motions and the forms until you can act without thought. Yeah, it's pretty zen, but stick with me. Here's how it plays out. Kata denies this notion of go big or go home as a misconception. We believe in starting small. As you research and develop your vision, your path to success is simply learning faster. How? Well, you'll adopt an innovation mindset. Start moving. Physics also tells us that an object in motion tends to stay in motion. So with this in mind, what if I told you that failure was irrelevant, or better yet, failure could be a positive experience? The goal is better, faster, cheaper, real-time feedback. And you can tighten this feedback loop with an iterative process. Here's how the Kata works. What is your challenge? This is the goal of your vision that we talked about a minute ago, and it's usually going to happen 6 months to 3 years out. Then you ask yourself, what is the current condition? Where are you? This is simply truth without judgment. It's no blame, it's simply looking at reality. Then you ask, what is the next target condition? What can you do to move towards your challenge? What do you want to be true in 1 week to 3 months? And at this point, it's actually better if you don't know how. This pushes you outside your headlamp. And the payoff of this step is helping you to break down your assumptions about how things work and lead you to better solutions. The next question is, as you move towards your target condition, what is the smallest experiment you can run right now to move towards your target condition? Can you try it today? Can you do it this morning? Don't aim for a big thing. What is the simplest next step to take to move towards your target condition right now? Then before you do it, ask, what do you expect to happen? If you take this action, what do you predict? Then just run the experiment. After the experiment, take a moment of reflection. And this is key. How did reality differ from your expectation? The culture of knowledge makes us believe that if what you expected isn't what happened, something's wrong. Cue tears. We believe that this is absolutely the wrong way to think. We believe the gap between what you expected and what happened is learning. If there is no gap, there was no learning. If there was no learning, you're not innovating. So after reflection, what is your next experiment? What can you run right away? What do you expect? Then what did you learn from the gap? And you just keep on doing that cycle. So note at this point that if your feedback loop takes 3 months of planning before you can run a test in the real world, your learning will be inefficient. But if you can tighten this feedback loop to days or hours, you simply move and learn faster. And don't forget, we absolutely believe that one experiment is worth 1,000 expert opinions. And so we encourage you to practice this kata. It's intended to become a lifestyle of innovation. It's not a way of doing, it's a way of being. If you'd like to learn more, please sign up for our 2-hour Innovation Mindset workshop on November 16th, and we'll have a chance to practice this cycle in real time. Human-centered design and Kata practice are just two of the many ways we are setting up our Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship to provide an unbroken arc of learning and access to take you from concept to startup. And again, don't wait for a great idea. Start with a mediocre idea, like better collar stays. Come in and visit us before you have a great idea. Practice on a bad idea. All of these steps will help you to be more open to feedback. They'll make you less influenced by the sunk cost fallacy that this idea has to work because you've invested so much of your time, energy, and heart. And remember, the innovation mindset is not a task. It's not something you cross off your list. It's something you live. It's a lifestyle, a mindset. And almost everything you experience is the result of some human decision. We're simply asking, why not yours? Thank you. So I think we're right at time. Let me pop this over again. If everybody's had a chance to list those off, you can copy our contact information. As we boot up for the next session, we'll share some of our other resources. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now. And we should be back. All right, thank you. It looks like we're back. That was, I will say that was a lot of information dump. So I hope it didn't go by too quickly. We will have time in the next session to unpack it a little. I think at this point, we can either join another breakout room or just keep going. So how does everybody feel?
Feeling pretty good. Feeling pretty fired up that these resources are available.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting.
It is exciting.
We were down for 18 months during COVID. And we just a couple months ago actually started getting back up and running and opening up our classes. So this is very much a startup experience for us as well. This is ground floor. We've been giving tours we generally do tours every Tuesday. And I've been sharing with people, you know, the folks that come in tend to enjoy that startup kind of feel. And this is ground floor. So we're looking forward to meeting all of you.
David, why don't you share your program where you did the welding for the young girls? Because I think that's real fun.
Yeah. So if I guess we'll just roll right on into the next session here. I'm going to pop up here in the chat and see if there are questions. But it's worth explaining that much of what we do, because we're in the engineering technology building, much of what we do is give people access to tools and training that they generally wouldn't have access to. So we have, again, this $2+ million worth of equipment, from water jet cutters to 3D printers, on and on. We just got a new CNC router, which is selling out our classes. But I have to point out, so thank you for the segue, Chuck. One of our most popular pieces of equipment is, well, I guess we have hammers, which are a little bit lower tech, but one of our most popular pieces of equipment are welders. And one of the things that we pushed when we kind of started out this process is this idea that we could get you up and running in any of these pieces of equipment, not in 8 weeks or 12 weeks or 2 years, but in 2 hours, right? And so one of the first things that we looked at was welding. How can we teach people welding in 2 hours? And we wanted to make it an interesting challenge. So our very first class, our very first welding class was for a Girl Scout troop of 9-year-olds. And we asked for their parents to come. They signed the waiver, and yeah, we sat down and walked them through the process. And I have to tell you, I've taught that class probably another 20, 30 times. Those girls were pros. You know, we teach you to get right in there and lock down your torch, you know, to get your, you know, the stick out on your MIG gun and scratch it against the surface and pull the trigger. And it was amazing to see how these young girls took to it. And it was one of the first opportunities that we had to really make this point that, honestly, after that, if you don't weld again, that's okay, right? We're not going to make you an expert. What's going to make you an expert is now you can practice. But this notion that well, I'm going to take a step back. You walk into that class not knowing anything about welding, and you walk out of that class having fused metal together with the power of lightning, right? I mean, we should give everybody a name tag that says Thor, right, at the end of class. And there's something that happens. You could see it in these girls' eyes, and I've seen it in all ages at this point. There's something that happens when you say, I've got this, I can do this, that I think sets you up for success. And again, for that dispelling that fear of failure. In the welding class, in all our classes, you know, if you don't pass the coupon, if you don't pass your little test at the end of class, you try again until you do pass it, right? We make sure that everybody gets through. So thanks, Chuck. What else do we have? Open up the chat.
There's one comment there from Miguel from Impact Washington about the Toyota Kata.
Yes. Thank you. So yeah, I'll read. Thank you for the point on the Toyota Kata for innovation. We use it for continuous improvement. It makes total sense to apply all aspects. Yeah, I mean, this half hour, the last half hour was a lightning round overview. If you want to know more about Toyota Kata, here's the book. On my screen, it's reading backwards, but at least this is what it looks like. It's a thin book. We picked it up through Cost Tailored, and they actually work. Their Kata mentor is the person who edited this book. So they have definitely taken a deep dive into Kata. If you want to geek out about this, the other book that I don't think we put in the list is the Toyota Way. This is a dense book. If you think that I dumped a lot of information rapidly, this book, it's good nighttime reading. It's fascinating information, but it probably will put you to sleep. But it does walk through the 14 management principles. We look at Kata. Tucker and I have been working on this class for a while, and we're taking a slightly different view of Kata simply because the actual Kata way, the procedure is fairly rigid. It's used in manufacturing. We're trying to open up that way of thinking a little bit more broadly. And we're really going to focus on the notion that you can use Kata for leadership, and you can use Kata for business management, problem solving, not just systems improvement. Kata is often used to help lines run faster, but it's fantastic for any problem solving that you may have.
Yeah, and I think what David is teaching at the Innovation Center is the fact that we need to learn how to learn, and take a little bit of risk, mentally risk in producing things, and let your imagination wander. And he talks about a playground for inventors. I mean, it's a lot of fun. You got to come down and look at some of these pieces of equipment that we have that you can learn. And for a very nominal amount of money, for sure, when you're doing a 2-hour class. So it's pretty exciting. I am an owner of a small business, plastic manufacturing, and as you were told, I teach entrepreneurship and business strategy and campus marketing and a few other things. And I have to say that Dave kind of opened my mind because of his design background and his thought processes, much different than mine. Mine was much more conservative. And I feel a lot better about taking risks and coming up with ideas and experimenting with them because it's kind of fun. And the iteration of taking a product from cardboard to plastic is pretty fun. So I'd be done.
And that's really our whole point is if we can close that feedback loop. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this idea of failing faster, right? And I kind of feel like failure still is failure. We're trying to, kind of delegitimize the negative side of that. But if we can think about it in terms of just closing a feedback loop, like I mentioned, if your feedback loop takes 3 months, it's really hard to learn quickly. If we can tighten that feedback loop, for example, I gave a tour just last night and everybody is always really excited about the 3D printers, right? And I'm kind of the mind, like a 3D printer is great until you need a hammer. And then you really just need a hammer. And so tools are just tools. And one of the things that I like to point out is that we want rapid prototyping, and the products that you can get, the parts that you can get off a 3D printer compared to getting on a metal mill or some other more laborious process makes us feel like 3D printing is a rapid prototyping process. And don't get me wrong, it is fantastic. It is world changing. I will rhapsodize about 3D printing all day long. But oftentimes having a conversation is quicker, or making a sketch is quicker. Getting out your, doing the whole Martha Stewart thing, right? I mean, get out some pine cones and foam core and hot glue and get your idea across. If you have plasticine, one of the things that we are very definitely adding to our innovation center is the idea that we want to support the creative process as much as we support the prototyping process. So pre-COVID, the program that we were running was primarily a makerspace, which meant that if you had a blueprint, you could come in and you had access to all of this equipment that you never had access to before, right? And I continue to believe that that is a world-changing opportunity. Makerspaces are popping up all over. This is going to be an amazing transformation. I think it's one of those things that made PPE available in the midst of COVID, right? Is all of these people in makerspaces and individual homes started just making products, right? Because the tools are available in a way that they weren't before. But what we realized is that for everybody who has a blueprint, there's 100 people who have an idea but don't know where to start, right? So at the beginning, so the idea as we move from just a makerspace to an innovation center is that at the front end, hang on just a second. At the front end of that blueprint process, what we're going to be working more on is creative confidence, human-centered design thinking, Kata practice, more of this kind of design development part. My background is in industrial design, so I kind of had the oversight that, everybody knows how to do CAD, everybody knows how to draw. I think we missed the boat there early on. What we're working to add is that piece. And then, the tail end of that is the number of times somebody comes into the center and starts making something for themselves. They're just solving a personal problem. And then you realize that there's probably 10,000, 100,000, 1 million people with your same problem that you could turn this into a business, right? That spark of entrepreneurship hits. So what we're working on the tail end with SBA and Giselle and some other partners is more supports that help you understand, okay, at this point, then how do we scale, right? How do we move into manufacture? So hopefully we're putting all those pieces together. The dream, all of these pieces exist in isolation in other locations. We're not necessarily inventing any new part of this process, but I am not aware of any place at any other university or college anywhere where all of that entire arc from inspiration all the way through startup can happen under one roof. So we are doing our best to remove barriers. I will make a note here. Michelle Mackey wrote, again, about the welding with the Girl Scouts. One more point that's worth talking about. As we put our 2-hour curriculum together, we have learned over the last few months that we need to really prioritize getting people right to work. So in all of our classes, our goal is to actually get you doing the thing that you have come to do in the first 10 minutes. right? So if you come to our welding class, our goal, once you stand up from the table and you walk over to the welder, within 10 minutes, you've made a tack weld. When you walk over to our CNC router, within 10 minutes, you're actually driving that CNC router around. When you walk into our wood shop, within 10 minutes, you're actually cutting wood and making chips. So yeah, absolutely. We are deeply committed to making sure that you get rolling.
Yeah, safety is the main ingredient, of course, in what we're dealing with on the equipment. So David spends many minutes and hours with people. That safety is what we care about. We don't want you walking out with one less arm. It's just not good business.
Excellent, excellent. So let me ask, quick poll, and maybe Giselle can watch for this. How many people did the switch over? How many of you are new and would like me to just quickly run through the last half hour's presentation? I can do it in about 5-6 minutes if we work it.
We almost have like half of the people here are all new. So
We're all new. Okay.
yeah, I
Okay.
think it's worth doing the presentation again.
Yeah, so we'll rip through this, and again, all of you can unmute. If you're uncomfortable writing things into the chat, just like interrupt, jump in. We're here for a discussion. But let me just run through really quickly kind of how we set up this notion of innovation mindset. And really it works like this. The question that we always have is, why do startups fail, right? Our job is to make sure that startups have the best chance of success. It's a risky thing. And we believe that the tragedy actually in this situation is that most startups fail because they just don't start up, right? And this seems a little counterintuitive until we can kind of dive into this notion that we believe that everybody actually is creative. Creativity is written into your DNA. If you don't believe that's true about you, my mother did not think she was creative, but she was fantastically creative. It was in a slightly different way, right? If you don't think you're creative, let me ask you, if in the last 72 hours, you've had an experience where something that maybe you looked for a product on Google and you couldn't find it, or maybe you were out in the world and you had an experience that just left you with a sense of dissatisfaction. Or it could be that you look into the future and the direction that you see the world moving is not the direction that you imagine when you think of your preferred future, right? In other words, the trajectory of what you want and the trajectory of where we're going is not the same. I would ask you to think that if you've had either one of those experiences, your subconscious is telling you that you have a better idea. It was hilarious, actually. I was practicing this presentation just last night before our tour, and one of the women who came in literally said those same words. She said, I asked, why did you come, right? Everybody, I want to know, because I want to make sure they get out of the tour what they came for. And she said, well, here's my experience, right? Is I look for things in stores and I can't find them, or I go and I try to find something and it doesn't quite meet my needs. In this situation, typically we hope that there's we hope we can find it on Amazon or something, right? I'm asking, if your subconscious is telling you that you have a better idea, innovate, start moving, give it a shot. All of the reasons that keep you from moving forward, access to equipment, access to knowledge, all of those barriers are things that we are rapidly working to remove, right? So if you think that, well, you can't afford to jump in, well, start smaller, right? If you think that, well, the knowledge isn't available, most of what you need to know, you can start learning in a couple of hours, right? All of our classes are 2 hours, they're $50. It's as cheap and quick and affordable as we can possibly make it. So you can get moving. And when we ask why startups fail, and we realize that people don't start startups for a reason that is almost universally consistent. And I think 99 times out of 100, it's fear of failure. We're aware of all the reasons other people have failed. We haven't experienced those yet, but we're aware of the reasons everybody else has failed. And we can't imagine that we can do any better, right? And what I'm going to say is that fear of failure is a broken mindset. And the broken mindset is based on this misconception. We believe in a culture of knowledge. We believe, and I struggle with this too. betting that all of you struggle with this. We believe that we have to know something before we act, right? We believe that we have to make a successful prediction about the future. And if it doesn't work out that way, that's a failure. And we think that that's absolutely a wrong mindset. What we're really promoting is to let go of this culture of knowledge and to embrace a culture of learning, right? And we're a college program, and so it's worth mentioning that learning doesn't just happen within 5 years, kind of in your early 20s, right? That learning for all of us is a continuing process. What we really want to embrace is this question of how can we help you learn faster, right? If we can help you learn faster, if we can help you embrace this culture of learning, all of a sudden that failure doesn't matter, because it's gonna teach you something, and you're gonna make another iteration, and you're gonna move forward, right? So this is the beauty of iterating, and it's the beauty of starting small. And so for us, and I'll find my notes here, and I'll just quickly walk through how Kata works. Here we go. So for us, we're going to recommend a Kata, a way of practicing this sort of scientific thinking, which says you're going to come up with a hypothesis about what you want in the future, and then you're going to test that hypothesis, right? And if your prediction matches what you expect, okay, you're not innovating yet. But if your prediction doesn't match what you expect, then you can learn. Then you can make another hypothesis and you can move forward. So here's how it works. In Kata, in our Kata innovation mindset thinking, you're going to start with a challenge. And that challenge is something that you want in 6 months to 3 years, right? So it's a big, this is your Everest, right? But imagine if you're climbing Everest, you're going to leave Camp 4 at about 11 o'clock at night. It's going to be pitch black. You're going to be wearing a headlamp, and you're not going to be able to see more than 3 meters outside of your headlamp, right? It's pitch black. The sun isn't going to come up for hours, but if you wait until the sun comes up and you can see so that you can move forward, you will not make it to the summit and back alive. Right? So you have to start in the dark. You have to start moving. And this is where we really, we think of this in terms of physics. Physics tells us that an object at rest tends to stay at rest. In other words, it's hard to get moving. But it also tells us that an object in motion tends to continue in motion. In other words, once you get started, once you start letting go of that fear of failure, it's easier and easier to push forward. So you have this challenge. The first question is you're going to ask, what's your current condition? What is your current reality? And this is not judgment. This is not blame. This is just taking a sober look at reality. Then you can say, that's where you are. Then you can ask, where's your target condition? Where do you want to be? What's the first achievable thing that you can do to move towards your challenge, your Everest? When you understand those two, you see a gap. And so the question is, what experiment, what tangible thing can you do, preferably today, preferably right now? What's the smallest next step that you can take to fill that gap, right? Before you actually run that experiment, before you actually do the thing that you do your hypothesis, right? We're going to ask, make a prediction. Imagine what the outcome will be. Then run your test and then compare, how did your prediction match up to reality? If they're the same thing, you're not outside your threshold of knowledge, right? And if you want to innovate, you have to push outside your threshold of knowledge. So either you need a bigger challenge or you need to take a bigger step, but push outside that threshold of knowledge. That gap will tell you what to do next. And so you just come up with the next, what's the next smallest thing that you can do to close the gap between your current condition and your target condition. And you're going to pivot, right? You're going to pivot or persevere. Honestly, we're going to have a whole class coming up on, when to throw in the towel, right? We talk a lot in business about, entrepreneurs survive because of grit, but every once in a while, there's an idea that just isn't going to go anywhere. And you've got to know when to throw in the towel and when to move on to another idea, right? So this iterative process, this process of throwing out a new goal, coming up with a new hypothesis, taking that next step and continuously learning, right? Kaizen is really about this notion of continuous improvement. It's taking a series of small steps. And I think sometimes, I have people who come in all the time and they say, hey, I'm waiting for this island idea, right? And I'm like, what do you mean by an island idea? And they'll say, it's an idea that's so big, I'm going to be able to monetize it and buy an island. And I think, okay, so even if that were true, even if you did come up with an idea that is so fantastic that it's going to buy you an island, if you wait until you have that idea to practice, it's going to put you at a disadvantage. It's like waiting until you're in the playoffs to practice your free throw, right? The point we're trying to make is start now, start small, experiment to learn, and move forward. And what this enables you to do is to scale your idea as it grows. And I can talk about that a little bit as well in terms of injection molding. So I think that gives us kind of a quick overview. Any questions? And feel free just to shout them out.
David, I think it's important to mention that this is not just for students. The Innovation Center is for community. It's for everyone. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt just put into the chat a question. How does this work for students of color or marginalized students who come from a significant deficit background and are trying to move forward? That's fantastic. This is one of those pieces that the beauty of the makerspace movement, and I think the beauty of the extension that we're really trying to push, is that opportunity used to be wholly owned by privilege, right? Opportunity used to be a wholly owned subsidiary of privilege, right? So if you had a great idea, that's great. But if you don't have access to the equipment and the machinery and the knowledge and the good schools, right? I think one of the massive transformations in our world is that opportunity is becoming distributed, right? So the first step for us is this idea that you can get, almost anybody now can get access to, $2 million worth of equipment. So I think that in terms of economic opportunity, that is a huge step forward. We are, for those who can't afford the $50 payments, that's about as cheap as we can run it. We are working towards having some scholarships. So, again, the point of this is that we want this knowledge, we want this equipment to be available to everybody so that your success is not based on your privilege, it's based on the quality of your ideas, right? That should be the determiner. In terms of people who might have other educational deficits is another massive passion of ours, because what we realize is that a lot of learning is done in a verbal linguistic way, right? So we have a lot of people who come in and they say, like me, I don't do math, I'm horrible at math, but I can do geometry, right? When I actually start working with a mill, when I actually start doing CAD, I am doing math, I'm just doing it in a way that works with my brain a little bit better. So I think, this idea that we can have kinesthetic learners, we can have, a bunch of other learning styles available when you come in and do this hands-on work. And in fact, what we really, really try to do in our 2-hour, particularly our hands-on, well, they're all hands-on to some extent, is to combine these learning styles so that no deficit is left behind. So Matt, I hope that answers your question. We're awesome, thank you. So I have to ask Matt, what is the picture in the background there? Your back?
When I was stationed in Korea, this is the Gyeongbok Palace. So it's kind of like I found it on the internet, and I've U.S. Army 10 years. I'm the director of the Veterans Resource Center at Evans College. So I always like to incorporate diversity and look at how, businesses or alliances can work to support veterans or the marginalized population students that I work with a lot, and how that can move forward. So, but quite honestly, this is just, just something fun, because I want people to know that there's just more than one type of veteran out there. It's not the traditional style of looking veterans that we all think of.
Absolutely. Thank you for your service.
And David Preston is raising his hand.
Hi,
Yes.
David Preston, Port of Edmonds, and David, hi again. You probably don't remember, we took a tour with some of us port people probably 3-4 years ago. I loved it. It felt like my junior high shop class. I was just like vibrating because I could get out and make stuff, and I need to get back there, need to get my kids there. But a couple things struck me that you talked about. One of them, as far as the privilege, I would argue Henry Ford didn't have any privilege. He was just a persistent son of a gun. So there's that element too. So let's not say only privileged people have opportunities. I know a lot of kids that don't have any privilege, very poor, that are very innovative because they didn't have the privilege. So I would almost say there's other side to that coin. Innovation could come from poverty too. So let's look at both sides of that. But what got me excited about all the talk about innovation is, you have a great idea. Well, if you have your own idea, you think it's great, right? But then it fails, or it's pointed out to you, like often my ideas on the Port Commission are, and even my own business, you find out it's bad, how fast you turn away from it, right? So my question to everybody here is, why don't government bodies turn away from bad ideas? Why do they keep pouring money and effort into crappy ideas? I'll just be blunt, right? There's a lot of it, and there's a lot of it going on today. Probably the worst thing today is the homeless industrial crisis. There is, or complex, I should say, there's more money being put towards it, and the problem gets worse and worse. Why are we keep doing the same thing there? So I just throw that out. It's off track in a way, but then it's on track from your innovative ideas. So thanks, and I look forward to coming up to seeing you again.
Yeah, please do. Please do. And I will say, we're right down to the wire. I don't know if they're just going to cut us off. So I'm going to say this. I thank you for pointing out that this same practice, right, this same way of thinking, it's not always about products. Sometimes that it's about bureaucracies and kind of stuck ways of thinking, right? I mean, what we're hoping is to actually put together design sprints, teach design sprints, so that, questions like homelessness, we can kind of step out of our assumptions and start asking, like, how do we actually solve some of these problems, right? Because I believe we're in a better position today than ever to solve problems.
Right.
We network better, right? All of that. And I will say 100% agreed about the connection between innovation and poverty. I was actually born in Zaire, in the Belgian Congo. I spent a big chunk of my childhood in Africa. And, frankly, what I saw all around me is this is why I believe we're all innovators, right? What I saw around me was nonstop innovation. I honestly believe, and I think you'll agree, that those of us who have maybe more privilege, right? Or we live in a more privileged society, actually, we start to give away that birthright, right?
Yeah.
And absolutely, I think we can't overlook that everybody is an innovator. And if you doubt that, watch the way kids play, right?
Yeah.
Kids play and they build and they make, they never stop. That sadly, I think, is sort of eked out of them because we buy into a culture of knowledge when we should buy into a culture of learning. So anything else? I'll keep going until they kick us off. So
I just drop into chat your email address. So if any of you are interested of visiting the facility, checking out the equipment that David has been mentioning, feel free to reach out to him.
yeah, I could actually maybe share my screen here again, and we will close out with, let's see if I can do this twice in one. Yeah, so there's the screen. We'll keep going if there are any other questions.
David, could you just mention a couple of things about the value of collaboration at the Innovation Center?
The value of collaboration is, I think, unparalleled. And I think, again, this is one of those places where, because of the internet, because of communication technology, we're more privileged. Yeah, we have access to more opportunity than ever before. So here's one of those interesting things is the peak of innovation, really, if you look at the statistics, was back at about 1873, kind of after the steam revolution. And what we have is back then, everybody, I think this is why it peaked then, right? Back then, everybody knew how to do things. My grandpa knew how to, sew up a cut, knew how to shoe a horse, knew how to bring in the, like you had to know how to do everything. We have moved more and more towards sort of abdicating that process. So we still do innovation, right? But, we're going to Mars. Mars is closer than you think. But what we've done is we've put that process of innovation in the hands of fewer and fewer people. And here's what we passionately believe is that we have a world that's facing uncertainty. If we doubted that before COVID, we don't doubt it anymore, right? We have plenty of problems that need to be solved, and we need people with perspectives across all political spectrum, right? We need everybody, all hands on deck to move forward in these things. And the beauty of collaboration is that everybody has a perspective. And if we can bring all of those perspectives to the table, we are going to get better solutions. So collaboration is absolutely key. One of the CAD classes that we're going to be putting together here, probably not until the new year, but is BIM, is Building Information Management. It's a fancy way of saying collaboration in CAD. So, ideally we can collaborate with people through the computer, through the design process, pretty much all over the world.
Thank you.
So I'm going to stop that screen. I'm hoping everybody got a chance to copy those things down. And all right. So any other questions? We're 3 minutes over, but they haven't kicked us out yet.
They're about to kick us out. David, this is Lance. Really quickly, I just also wanted to point out our collaboration with Welding and the Spanish